Hey, so in today's video, I'm going to answer a question that I always get asked on social media and by therapists in my mentorship program, and that is, what are my top 10 physio book recommendations to help you become the go-to therapist? So I'm going to go through my top 10, and I've got a couple of bonus ones for you as well, because it is very, very hard to keep it within 10. I've got literally thousands of books in my office at home. So I'm going to start with the first book, which is the Colour Atlas of Anatomy. So what I do with this is, if I'm doing any hands-on treatment, or if I'm looking at muscle architecture or anything like that, you can see I've got some bits here. I'm very, very interested in the angles that the muscles are attaching into the tendons, among many other bits there. So, you know, I study this a lot when I was kind of going back to principles and understand the movement and muscle architecture, as I said, among other bits. This is a book that I spent quite a bit of money on, but I refer to it a lot. Okay, and again, I take pictures of it on my phone of certain bits. You can see I've got them all bookmarked in there, and then you know, I'll refer back to that for my hands-on to help my intent as well. Now, obviously, we're not just influencing muscles when we do hands-on treatment. There's a lot of other stuff as well, but it just guides my direction. So that's the first one, Colour Atlas of Anatomy. I think it's a great addition to any library. Okay, now when we keep along the 8 pillars of the go-to therapist, and we start looking at the you know, at the subjective assessment and understanding the person, this is a new book that recently I acquired, and you know, I think therapists in the mentorship, they can definitely see the influence that John Berardi's book Changemaker had on my subjective assessment with our level of questioning, but also in terms of breaking down our rehab progressions into very, very simple progressions. So this goes into some great psychology about what the person wants, and it really will help you really understand the person in front of you rather than just looking at the side of pain. So it's quite a new book. I think it was just released last year. So, you know, to say that it's making my top 10 already just kind of goes to show that it's really made an impact on me. And you know, especially therapists in the mentorship, as I said, they'll kind of notice a lot of stuff that we've taken from here. Okay, so in terms of my objective assessment, okay, so our actual assessment techniques with the mentorship, this is a useful book. Okay, so again, this is more of an applied kinesiology approach. I don't use applied kinesiology, but it's a muscle testing book, and I'm really interested in force steadiness. So again, the ability to tolerate load in certain directions in submaximal contraction. So when I muscle test, I don't do it maximally. Okay, I'm really interested in the proprioceptive ability to tolerate load at submaximal contractions, and that's something that's a big interest of mine at the moment, because clinically I see a lot of stuff where people, they really struggle submaximally, but they're okay when they use a high threshold strategy. So this is a nice book. As I said, you know, some of the stuff they use applied kinesiology, I don't use that. But in terms of understanding, you know, how do I put load through some of these tissues and the surrounding areas, I think it's a nice book to have. It's by Hans Garten, the muscle test handbook. So as I said, as with everything that we do in the mentorship, it's about principles. It's not just about, you know, taking a technique. It's understanding why we're doing things, and I think that's a nice one to have. Okay, so then when we start to go to actually understanding our assessment on a deeper level, this is a really good book. Actually, Franz Bosch, when I spent the day with him over in Holland, recommended it to me. It's called Biomechanics and Motor Control by Mark Latash and Vladimir Satsiowski. I never get his name right, apologies. Okay, and again, this goes into a lot of movement stuff. Okay, so again, you know, Franz Bosch will talk a lot about this stuff, and this really helped me get clear on when I talk about, you know, Louis Gifford talks about thoughtless, fearless movement, about transitioning from the top down rehab exercises to the bottom up. So this was a big influence on me. It's very, very heavy going, I'll be honest with you. Like the stuff that they're talking about in here, you know, you kind of have to read a paragraph 2-3 times, but when you can make sense of it, it really helped me design rehab exercises better. I think that's probably the biggest influence it had on me. Okay, so in terms of looking at my assessments, we're able to challenge basis support and kind of understand what was going on, among many other things, and then really give me that background to help me design some rehab exercises. Okay, so the next book I'm going to come to is patient communication. Okay, so I'm just trying to think if I've missed any. Okay, and actually this one is the art of explanation. Okay, so I was in, it's absolutely ruined because I was in, I took this book first to, I think it was either Crete or somewhere like that on holiday with the family, and it got wet and all that stuff. Okay, and I read that on holiday, and you know, it's geared towards actually marketing, but you'll see like this stuff is absolute gold in this in terms of like how to get an idea across to a patient. Okay, so again, in the mentorship, one of my pillars is patient communication or effective explanation, and you know, a therapist in the mentorship will definitely see what I've taken from this and how I've implemented this into physiotherapy. So that's worth to read, The Art of Explanation for Patient Communication. Okay, so now that we're starting to get on to our treatment techniques, okay, or hands-on treatment or whatever like that, it's actually not a hands-on treatment book. Okay, so again, if you want like a pin and stretch book or something like that for hands-on, you know, there's I think Jane Johnson's got a book like that I have at home, but just didn't make the list. But in terms of hands-off and being able to influence tissues and influence the nervous system, in terms of, you know, there's lots of different stretching methodologies out there. I personally have found that I got the best results with the active isolated stretching, the Matisse method. So Ger Hartman, who's a physical therapist in Ireland, years ago I went over to spend a few days with him, and he was doing a lot of this stuff when I was starting out. So I got really interested in that, and you know, I've got some other bits and pieces in here as well. And you know, I found if you want to change range of motion and influence these tissues and influence the nervous system, you know, this is probably one of the best ways to do it. So active isolated stretching, the Matisse method has made the list. And again, if I ever want to, especially telehealth recently, this has become really important that we can't use our hands. I've actually found myself going back to this and coming back to some of the movements on that. Okay, so that's more for the treatment process. Okay. Then when we want to understand our rehab, okay, we're going to come to Franz Bosch's book and Ronald Klump, Running. Okay, so I use this book a lot when I have a muscle injury. So if I got a rec fem tear or a soleus or something, and I want to double check anatomy, I want to double check like what else has to work, what these muscles are supposed to be doing, so I can create better rehab exercises and also look at the synergies that have to do their job that mightn't be doing their job. So I come back to this book a lot. There's another book that just missed the cut. It's called Human Locomotion by Thomas Michaud, I think it's called. That was a close second to this book. So if I ever need some anatomy where I want to really understand stuff, or I've got a tricky case, I'll look at my Colour Atlas of Anatomy, I'll go into this, and I'll refer back to this quite a bit as well. Okay, so then when we get to program design, okay, I'm going to come to Franz Bosch's other book, Strength Training Coordination. I personally don't use a lot of these exercises, but I love this, okay, because I think this goes a little bit with the mature organism model from Louis Gifford, a little bit of predictive processing, where there's a lot of different things going on influencing the system. It's not just the muscle, okay? So this is great. I've taken the principles of Franz Bosch, and I would certainly see the exercises that I designed based on the work of Latache and all of these books, the stuff that I tried to create. I would very much see those as a regression to Franz Bosch's exercises. So a lot of Franz Bosch's exercises, when I tried to do them with a lot of athletes, they get a lot of back pain and they wouldn't maybe have the mobility or some stuff to do that stuff. So I kind of see my stuff as a rehab version of Bosch's to earn the right to progress, so that they can do a lot of Bosch's kind of exercises. So the actual exercises in Bosch's books, I probably don't do as much of them, but I would see my stuff as a regression. And he actually signed this book for me here, which is nice. I actually have my, it's a bookmark here, it's my plane ticket over to him actually. So Dave, thanks for translating this to rehab. Okay, so again, you know, I certainly see my stuff as integrated exposure ladder, the early progressions to his stuff. Okay, then we're nearly there. Okay, so I think I've got 2 more books for you. This has actually made a big influence on me, TRIPHASIC Training, Cal Dietz. Okay, so again, he's got a lot of similarities to my beliefs and my approach. And the TRIPHASIC Training, you know, he talked a lot about stuff there, and he helped me make sense in this book a lot of why a lot of the stuff that I was doing maybe was helping. And he also then made me appreciate that actually I was doing too much of the concentric stuff or too much core contractions around the knee. And actually everyday life, a lot of times people need to bend the knee. So again, the eccentric phases of this book as well, I went back and I changed the mentorship, some of the stuff, because I realized that actually sit the stands and stuff like that, a lot of times there's a lot of eccentric load, whereas I was focused too much on the isometrics and the core contractions around the knee. When I read this, I was like, right, yeah, I'm missing something here. So then we improved the system, okay? When I was working with England in the World Cup, they done a lot of stuff with him. I think he consulted with the S&C guys as well. So it was great to see the TRIPHASIC actually in play as well. And it just complements my stuff. So it's a bit like Bosch's stuff. In terms of the rehab stuff and the graded exposure that I prepare athletes and non-sporting patients. It gets them ready to, when they're back and they're loading, it gets them really ready to load these two, okay? And then probably the last but not least, okay, and it's kind of 3 books in one. It's this has probably made the biggest influence on my approach. It's Louis Gifford's Aches and Pains. He's obviously deceased now, so this is it's probably one of the biggest regrets that I wasn't able to go to a course live with him, but this changed everything for me as well, okay? Because I was certainly somebody who was thinking I was breaking up scar tissue and I was doing this and I was doing that, and when I read those books I was just like, okay, that makes sense. And what I love about his books is that they're just written like such an easy tone to understand. So again, he's not trying to wow you with sounding smart. He's just trying to keep it really simple. And you can definitely see his approach. He's influenced me, even though I've never met him. He's influenced me massively with how I teach. So again, everything I put out there, I'm not trying to sound smart. I'm trying to help therapists, make sense of assessments and actually get results. And that's where, if you've picked up any of my books, okay, shameless plug, 3 bonus books, okay. If you picked up any of my books, you'll see the way I write. It's been influenced by Louis Gifford's, okay? So Louis Gifford's stuff, in terms of the pain science, it's unbelievable. And then in terms of the graded exposure as well, you'll see his influence in the mentorship approach as well. So they're the key books. Then, as I said, my 3 books that I've got out at the moment, this book I wrote about systems, okay? So this is a graded exposure for me of how to take a patient from the initial assessment all the way up to high-level rehab, okay? So again, it's a book that it's more about a system rather than, do this or do that. I want you to understand the principles of what I do. So if you want to know about my step-by-step system, this is a great place to start the Go-To Physio book. The second book that I brought out late last year is Practical Injury Prevention for Team Sports. Again, I'm very fortunate to consult with a lot of teams, and when I was with Huddersfield Giants, we had very good injury rates, and I just brain dumped everything that we'd done during those 3 seasons, and I've put it into this book along with a lot of stuff that we learned as well. So if you're more interested in injury prevention and stuff like that, which it's more of an art than a science, then this book's going to give you a lot of that. And then this book's more for patients, back pain patients. So again, I wrote this more for people just to help them look at the body as a whole, and again, integrate the respiratory, the neurological and the musculoskeletal system. So this is more for patients rather than therapists. Okay, so that's the main books. So my top 10 books, with a shameless plug for my own 3 books. As I said, if you want to have a system and structure, and if you want to see kind of how I've taken all of this and put it together into a system and a structure, then this is the book, the Go-To Physio book. That's probably the book to start with. I do have plans to write more of a clinical book eventually, but I still feel that I still have a lot of mistakes to make. I still have to fuck up a few more players, unfortunately, before I can be completely clear with, okay, this is what we need to do. I said, I'm still making mistakes, but the nice thing is I'm making less and less mistakes these days because of the structure and because of the system, that there's less decision making. We want to tick those boxes on that graded exposure program. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, give me a shout. And as I said, all of these books, they made it. I've probably got another 1,000 books in the office that were close to this, but this will be the top 10.